The phone vibrated against my swollen belly just as the wedding photos lit up my screen. Lucas Alexandre, pale, perfect, untouchable, standing at the altar of the Ritz Paris in his Savile Row tuxedo. I shouldn't have been looking. I definitely shouldn't have been in Paris. But the Alexandra Tower project wasn't finished, and unlike love, architecture doesn't care about broken hearts or the fact that I was 8 months pregnant with the groom's baby. The cramping started the second I saw his face. Not the gentle Braxton Hicks my doctor had warned me about. Real, viscous pain that doubled me over on the Rue de Rivoli, my phone clattering to the cobblestones. A woman in Chanel sunglasses gasped. A taxi swerved. And somewhere across the city, in that suffocating ballroom thick with champagne and expectation, Lucas Alexandre gripped the marble altar, his vision blurring, and collapsed at the feet of his suitable, pedigreed, absolutely wrong bride. Before you judge me, before you decide I'm the villain in some billionaire's tragic love story, do me one favor. Hit that like and subscribe button. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever loved someone you knew would destroy you. Because this story, it gets so much worse before it gets better. I need you here for all of it. They rushed him to Hôpital Américain de Paris. The same hospital where, at that exact moment, I was being wheeled through emergency doors, my water broken, my contractions 4 minutes apart, and absolutely no one to call because the only person whose number mattered was unconscious 3 floors above me. The nurse kept asking for my emergency contact. I kept saying nothing. What was I supposed to tell her? Oh, call the groom from that wedding on the news. Yes, the one who just collapsed. He's the father. No, he doesn't know. No, we're not together. Yes, I'm fully aware this sounds insane. For months earlier, Lucas Alexandre had walked into the conference room of Hall & Associates Architecture with the kind of confidence that comes from never being told no. I watched him through the glass walls as he moved past my junior associates, his Italian shoes clicking against our reclaimed hardwood floors, his eyes scanning our studio with the detached assessment of a man evaluating property. He was beautiful in that devastating French way, all sharp cheekbones and careless elegance, and he absolutely knew it. Mademoiselle Hall. He didn't ask. Just stated my name like a fact he'd memorized. I've reviewed your portfolio. Impressive work in Dubai and Singapore. Very efficient. The way he said efficient made it sound like an insult. I'd spent 6 years building a reputation as one of the most innovative commercial architects in Europe, and this man, this privileged heir who probably couldn't sketch a load-bearing wall to save his life, was dismissing my career with one backhanded compliment. Monsieur Alexandre. I gestured to the presentation boards my team had spent 3 weeks preparing. Shall we discuss why you're here, or would you prefer to continue patronizing me in French accented English? Something flickered behind his grey eyes. Surprise, maybe, or irritation. By all means, show me how you plan to build the new Alexandra Tower. I walked him through our design, a 40-story glass and steel structure that would house his company's expanding Paris headquarters. Modern, sustainable, technically flawless. Every angle optimized for light and efficiency. Every system designed to cut energy costs by 30%. It was brilliant work and we both knew it. Lucas studied the renderings in silence for a full minute. Then he looked up at me with something uncomfortably close to pity. This is a building for Houston or Shanghai, Mademoiselle Hall. Not Paris. Excuse me. It's technically perfect, yes. Environmentally responsible. Undoubtedly within budget. He tapped the main elevation drawing. It also has no soul. You're trying to impose American corporate efficiency on a city that has spent centuries learning to breathe. This building doesn't belong to Paris. It conquers it. Heat flooded my face. My team had gone silent, watching this unfold like a traffic accident. And I suppose you, a businessman with presumably zero architectural training, can define what belongs in Paris. I can define what belongs to my company. His voice stayed maddeningly calm. This design is culturally shallow, Mademoiselle Hall. It's Parisian privilege in reverse, an outsider's fantasy of modernity dropped onto soil you don't understand. I should have thrown him out. Should have called security. Instead I heard myself say, Then teach me. Lucas smiled. Slow and dangerous. When can you start? Lucas called the next morning at 7 a.m., which should have annoyed me but somehow didn't. I'm outside your apartment with terrible coffee and an apology. We start your education today. It's Saturday. Paris doesn't care about your American work schedule, Mademoiselle Hall. Get dressed. I should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries with a client who'd humiliated me in front of my entire team. Instead I pulled on jeans and a sweater and found him leaning against a completely ordinary Citroën. No driver, no designer suit, just Lucas Alexandre in a leather jacket looking almost human. Where's the Bentley? I asked, accepting the truly awful coffee he'd promised. Left it in the garage along with my last name. Today I'm just Lucas. You're just Jasmine. And Paris gets to teach us both something. He opened the passenger door. One condition, no talk of Alexandra Industries, no discussion of wealth or contracts or your building that I absolutely still hate. Just the city. Deal. I climbed in before I could overthink it. Deal. He drove us to the 13th arrondissement, parking in a neighborhood I'd never visited despite 6 months living in Paris. No Eiffel Tower views here. No picture-perfect cafes. Just narrow streets lined with Vietnamese restaurants and Chinese grocery stores. Street art covering walls that had probably stood since Napoleon. Lucas walked like he belonged here, greeting an elderly woman in Mandarin, stopping to examine a mural of cranes in flight. This is Paris too, he said quietly. The part we don't put in the tourism brochures. The part my mother pretends doesn't exist. He touched the painted feathers. An architecture student did this. No commission, no corporate sponsor. Just beauty for its own sake. We spent the day like that, wandering through neighborhoods that travel guides ignored, eating bon ami from a place Lucas claimed made the best in Europe, arguing about Le Corbusier in a used bookstore near Bastille where the owner let us read for hours without buying anything. Lucas translated graffiti poetry. I sketched building facades in my notebook. And somewhere between the morning coffee and the evening light turning the same golden, I stopped seeing the Alexandre air and started seeing just Lucas. I want to build schools, I told him as we walked along the river. In Senegal, Ghana, places where my grandparents came from. Not efficient corporate towers. Places where kids can learn and dream and become something their parents never imagined. Lucas stopped walking. Looked at me like I'd said something revolutionary instead of just honest. That's the soul I was talking about. That passion. Why isn't it in your designs? Because passion doesn't pay for itself. Corporate towers do. What if it could do both? His hand found mine. What if I helped you? 3 months dissolved like sugar in rain. Lucas rewrote our building design together. My technical brilliance meeting his cultural understanding, creating something that belonged to Paris instead of conquering it. But somewhere between the architecture and the arguments, between his apartment in the 7th and mine in the Marais, we'd built something more dangerous than any tower. We'd fallen completely, irrevocably in love. My mother wants to meet you, Lucas said one morning, his fingers tracing patterns on my bare shoulder. Family dinner. Friday night. I should have heard the warning in his voice. Should have noticed how he couldn't quite meet my eyes. Is that a good thing or a terrible thing? With Isabelle Alexandre, it's never simple. He kissed my temple. But you're not someone I can hide. Not anymore. Not ever. The Alexandre family estate in Neuilly-sur-Seine looked like it had been designed specifically to intimidate. All that old money elegance, marble entryway, original Monet in the foyer, staff who moved like ghosts through rooms the size of my entire apartment. Madame Isabelle Alexandre waited in the formal dining room wearing Chanel and judgment in equal measure. She didn't stand when we entered. Didn't smile. Just assessed me with eyes that had probably evaluated and dismissed 1,000 unsuitable women before me. Mademoiselle Hall. Lucas speaks very highly of your technical skills. The way she said technical made it sound pornographic. I felt Lucas tense beside me. Mother, Jasmine is the lead architect on our tower project. Her work is exceptional. I'm sure. Isabel gestured to the chair across from her, Too far from Lucas to touch, too close to escape her scrutiny. Tell me, Mademoiselle Hall, what does your family do? Your father's business. My father teaches high school chemistry in Philadelphia. My mother is a nurse. The silence that followed was surgical. Precise. Devastating. I see. And you studied architecture at, where was it? Howard University. Then graduate work at MIT. How ambitious. Isabel sipped her wine like she was drinking my inadequacy. Lucas, darling, surely you understand this is impossible. The Alexandre name has represented French excellence for 50 years. Our legacy requires certain standards. Certain compatibility. Jasmine is brilliant, accomplished, successful. She's an American tutor with a sketchbook. Each word landed like a slap. You will marry Sophie Dubois as arranged. You will merge our companies as planned. And you will end this distraction immediately. She finally looked at me. Or I will remove you from succession entirely. The company, the inheritance, the Alexandre name, all of it gone. Choose wisely, my son. Lucas reached for my hand under the table. But he didn't say a word. And in that silence, I heard everything I needed to know. Lucas bought me an apartment in the 16th arrondissement the week after that disastrous dinner. Elegant, expensive, hidden. A gilded cage with a view of the Trocadero and absolutely no connection to his public life. Just for a few months, he promised, kissing me against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Until I can make my mother understand. Until I can restructure the company's succession. I'm working on it, Jasmine. I just need time. Time. The universal currency of cowards. I moved in anyway, because I was just as much a fool as he was. Told myself this was strategic. We were finishing the tower design. We needed privacy to work. This was professional as much as personal. I believed my own lies for exactly 3 weeks. Then the gala happened.
Le bal des débutantes.
Paris's most prestigious social event, where France's elite families paraded their daughters and their wealth in equal measure. Lucas had mentioned it casually, a business obligation, unavoidable, meaningless. He'd be home by midnight. He'd promised. I saw the photos on Instagram at 9 p.m. Lucas Alexandre in black tie, impossibly handsome, his hand resting on the waist of Sophie Dubois. She wore Valentino and diamonds and the smile of a woman who knew exactly where she stood. The caption read, Alexandre Dubois merger all but confirmed, France's most eligible bachelor off the market. There were dozens of photos. Lucas laughing at something Sophie whispered. Lucas dancing with her while photographers circled like sharks. Lucas looking every inch the perfect French heir with his perfect French fiancée, playing his part in the dynasty his mother had scripted. Not one photo showed him checking his phone. Not one suggested he remembered the woman waiting in her hidden apartment, surrounded by architectural drawings and empty promises. He came to me at 2 a.m., still wearing his tuxedo, smelling of expensive champagne and Sophie's perfume. It's not what it looks like. I was sitting in the dark by the window, my laptop open to the society pages that had already written our ending. What does it look like, Lucas? Political theater. My mother's manipulation. I had no choice. You always have a choice. I finally looked at him. You're just too terrified to make one. I love you. He crossed the room, desperate. Jasmine, I love you. Everything else is strategy. It's buying time. I'm not a strategy. I'm not a secret. And I'm not going to be the woman you keep hidden while you build your real life with someone suitable. I stood up, my decision crystallizing. I'm leaving, Lucas. The project, Paris, you. All of it. Don't. His voice broke. Please. I just need more time. Love without courage is just a beautiful tragedy. I touched his face one last time. And I deserve better than tragedy. I gave him 1 week. 7 days to find whatever courage he'd misplaced somewhere between his mother's ultimatum and that gala with Sophie Dubois. 7 days to decide if I was worth fighting for or just another beautiful mistake he'd eventually forget. Lucas spent those days trying to negotiate the impossible. He hired lawyers to restructure the company's succession. Met with board members his mother didn't control. Even attempted to convince his largely absent father to intervene. He was working the problem like it was a business deal, throwing money and strategy at something that required nothing more complicated than the truth. On the 6th day, I told him exactly what I needed. We were in his apartment, the real one, the one with his name on the deed and his family photos on the mantel, and I was tired of being the secret he kept in the shadows. Make a choice, Lucas. Public and permanent. Me or the dynasty. Your mother or your life. I'm not asking you to burn everything down. I'm asking you to stand beside me in daylight and tell the truth. He looked at me with those grey eyes full of anguish and absolutely no resolve. You don't understand what you're asking. The Alexandra name is 50 years of legacy. Thousands of employees depend on this company. My family. Your family will survive your happiness. The question is whether you will. I just need more time. The same words he'd been repeating like a prayer for weeks. If I can restructure the voting shares, if I can get the board to stop. I felt something inside me break cleanly, almost mercifully. You're never going to choose me. Not really. Because choosing me means risking everything you've been told matters, and you're too afraid to find out what's on the other side of that risk. That's not fair. Love isn't fair, Lucas. It's terrifying and irrational, and it requires you to jump without knowing if there's ground beneath you. But you won't jump. You'll just keep building elaborate contingency plans while your mother plans your wedding to Sophie and I disappear into whatever footnote convenient for the Alexandra legacy. I kissed him goodbye. Let myself memorize the taste of him one last time, expensive coffee and regret and all the beautiful potential we'd never realize. Then I walked out of his apartment, out of his tower project, out of his carefully controlled life. The note I left on his kitchen counter was the same line I'd said to his face. Love without courage is just a beautiful tragedy. I didn't know I was already carrying his child. Didn't know that tragedy was just beginning. But I knew I deserved better than a man who loved me only in the dark. I discovered I was pregnant 2 weeks after leaving Paris, sitting in a Philadelphia bathroom at 3 a.m. while my mother slept in the next room. The test showed positive before I'd even set it down. 2 lines. Clear and undeniable and absolutely catastrophic. I didn't tell Lucas. Didn't tell anyone except my doctor and my conscience, which screamed at me nightly that I was making a terrible mistake. But what was I supposed to do? Call the man who couldn't choose me and tell him he was about to be a father? Watch him propose out of obligation instead of love? Or worse, watch Madame Isabelle Alexandre deploy her infinite resources to take my child or trap Lucas in exactly the loveless marriage I'd walked away to prevent? So I kept my secret. Built my life around it. Took projects in New York and London, anywhere but Paris. Told myself I was protecting my baby from a family that measured worth in pedigree and treated love like a corporate liability. Then the Alexandra Tower sent its final contract amendment. Critical design modifications needed before the Paris Planning Commission would approve construction. The client specifically requested the original architect. Me. In person.
Non negoziable.
I was 32 weeks pregnant and looked it. But I'd worked too hard on that building to let someone else finish it, so I booked a flight, packed my maternity clothes, and told myself I'd be in and out of Paris in 72 hours. Lucas would never know. I'd finish the tower that we'd designed together and leave before our lives could intersect. I made it 68 hours before everything collapsed. I was walking past Hôpital Americain, pure coincidence, just a shortcut to my hotel, when my phone exploded with news alerts. The photo stopped my heart, Lucas being loaded into an ambulance, his wedding day ending in chaos and emergency. The article said stroke. Critical condition. Touch and go. The first contraction hit me so violently I thought I'd been shot. Pain ripped through my abdomen, dropping me to my knees on the Rue de Rivoli. My water broke in a warm rush across expensive cobblestones. Someone was screaming, maybe me, Maybe the tourists watching this pregnant American woman collapse outside the very hospital where the man she loved was dying. A nurse reached me first, her hands gentle and professional. "Madam, how many weeks?" 32. I could barely breathe through the pain. "Too early. It's too early. We've got you. Can you walk?" I couldn't. They brought a wheelchair, rushed me through the same emergency entrance where they'd taken Lucas minutes before. Somewhere above me, 3 floors up, he was fighting for his life. And I was bringing his child into the world whether either of us was ready or not. They put me in a delivery room on the 2nd floor while Lucas was being prepped for emergency neurosurgery on the 5th. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were in the same building, closer than we'd been in 7 months, and he had no idea I existed. No idea his child was about to be born 8 weeks premature while he fought for his life 3 floors above. The contractions were coming every 3 minutes. Too fast, too strong. The neonatal team was preparing for complications. My baby was too small, too early, and I was alone in a French hospital with no family, no plan, and a heart that was shattering with every update the nurses whispered about the critical billionaire upstairs. Then Madame Isabelle Alexandre walked into my room flanked by 2 lawyers in €1,000 suits. She looked exactly as I remembered, impeccably dressed even in crisis, her face carved from ice and old money and absolute certainty. She didn't acknowledge my hospital gown or the monitors tracking my baby's distressed heartbeat. Just surveyed me like I was a problem she'd finally located. Mademoiselle Hall. How convenient. A contraction seized me before I could respond. I gripped the bed rail, breathing through agony while she watched with clinical detachment. "My son is dying upstairs," she said once I could focus again. "He requires immediate surgery. A craniotomy to relieve the pressure from his stroke. Without it, he will suffer permanent brain damage or death within the hour. Then sign the consent form." I managed through clenched teeth. "You're his mother." "I will sign nothing until we have an agreement." She nodded to her lawyers, who produced documents thick as a novel. "You are carrying my son's child. An illegitimate complication that threatens everything the Alexandre family has built. I will authorize Lucas's surgery in exchange for your signature here. Full termination of parental rights. No custody, no claims, no contact. The child becomes Alexandre property, and you disappear." Another contraction hit. The monitors screamed. A nurse moved to intervene, but Madame Isabelle held up one perfectly manicured hand. "We need privacy." "You're—" I couldn't breathe, couldn't think through the pain and the horror. "You're ransoming your own son's life. I'm protecting his legacy from a woman who was never suitable." She pushed the papers closer. "Sign, Mademoiselle Hall. Or my son dies while you deliver his bastard child. Your choice." I looked at those documents. At her cold, certain face. At the clock ticking down Lucas's life. Then I threw them across the room. "Save him." Tears streamed down my face. "Save him now. His life is not for sale. Not for this baby. Not for anything. If you let Lucas die to punish me, you're not protecting legacy. You're murdering your own son." The voice came from the doorway, quiet but absolute. "That will be quite enough, Isabelle." Monsieur Philippe Alexandre looked nothing like his daughter-in-law. Where she was ice, he was worn stone, weathered by decades of actual work, not just inherited wealth. He walked with a cane but moved with the authority of a man who'd built an empire with his own hands before Isabelle ever married into it. "Father, this doesn't concern. My grandson is dying while you play legal games with the woman who loves him." Philippe's eyes, Lucas's eyes, I realized, found mine. "And you, young lady, just refused to trade his life for your child's future." "Isabelle, in 60 years of watching people, I've never seen clearer proof of character." He pulled out his own phone, dialing with steady fingers. "This is Philippe Alexandre. My grandson Lucas requires immediate surgical consent for craniotomy. I am authorizing as founder and primary shareholder. Proceed now." He paused. "Yes, now. Bill any legal challenges to my personal account." Madame Isabel went white. You cannot. I built this company, Isabel. I can damn well save my grandson without your permission. He turned back to me as another contraction hit. What's your name, child? Jasmine. I gasped. Jasmine Hall. Well, Jasmine Hall, let's get you through this delivery. Then we'll sort out the rest. My son was born 40 minutes later, tiny and perfect and screaming with indignation at arriving early. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. Dark curls, Lucas's jawline, my skin. The nurses wrapped him in blankets and placed him on my chest while I sobbed with relief and terror and love so fierce it hurt worse than labor. Lucas woke up 3 days later. I was in the chair beside his bed, our son sleeping in my arms, when his eyes finally opened. Jasmine. His voice was rough, confused. Is this real? You had a stroke. At your wedding. I moved closer so he could see. Meet your son. He doesn't have a name yet. I was waiting for you. Lucas stared at the baby, at me, tears sliding down his face. Then he did something that made every nurse in the ICU stop and stare. He pulled the four from his hand, slid out of bed despite the protests, and dropped to his knees beside my chair. I choose you. His hand shook as he pulled a simple gold band from his hospital gown pocket, the one he'd been wearing under his wedding ring, I realized. The one he'd never taken off. No more time. No more strategy. Just you. Marry me, Jasmine. Please. I said yes before he finished asking. Madame Isabel Alexandre arrived with her lawyers 6 hours after Lucas proposed, her face a mask of barely controlled fury. She found us in his hospital room, Lucas sitting up despite doctor's orders, our son sleeping in the bassinet between us, my hand wrapped in his. This is unacceptable. She didn't bother with pleasantries. Lucas, you will end this immediately. Annul whatever ridiculous promises you made under medication. The wedding to Sophie can be rescheduled once you've recovered.
I'm marrying Jasmine.
Lucas's voice was steady, final. Next week, as soon as I'm discharged. You're welcome to attend or not. Your choice. Then you are no longer an Alexandre. Isabel's words could have cut glass. I will remove you from succession. Revoke your position. You'll have nothing, no company, no inheritance, no access to the family accounts. You'll be nobody. Good. Lucas squeezed my hand. I've been somebody my entire life and it nearly killed me. I'd rather be nobody with Jasmine than heir to an empire without her. You're throwing away 50 years of legacy for a woman and a bastard child. Careful, Isabel. Philippe Alexandre appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the room despite his age. That's my great-grandson you're discussing, and the woman my grandson loves enough to risk everything for. He moved to stand beside our bed. Lucas is removed from nothing. I'm transferring 40% of my personal shares to him directly. Enough to survive. Not enough to control. He'll have to build his own legacy now. Isabel's face went purple. You senile old fool. I'm the fool who built what you've been spending. And I say the boy has finally grown a spine worth respecting. Philippe touched our son's tiny hand. What will you name him? Lucas looked at me, then at his grandfather.
Philippe.
If that's all right with you. The old man's eyes went wet. It's more than all right, my boy. 6 months later, Lucas and I opened Hall Alexandre Design Studio in a converted warehouse in the Marais. No corporate contracts, no dynasty pressures. Just the two of us, our son sleeping in a Moses basket beside the drafting tables, building something honest. We took projects other firms rejected, community centers in forgotten neighborhoods, schools in developing nations, affordable housing that treated dignity as a design principle. The money was tight. The hours were brutal. Lucas's mother never spoke to us again. But every morning I woke up beside a man who'd chosen love over legacy, and every night we put our son to bed in a home built on courage instead of compromise. We were nobody, and we'd never been happier. The call came on a Tuesday morning 2 years after we'd walked away from the Alexandra Empire. Lucas was on the floor of our studio apartment teaching Philippe, now a wild-haired toddler with his father's eyes and my stubborn streak, how to stack blocks. I was at the drafting table finishing designs for a girls' school in Accra. Our life was chaotic and beautiful and nothing like the guilt cage we'd escaped. Lucas's phone rang with a number he hadn't seen in years. His father. The man who'd been conspicuously absent through every crisis, the wedding collapse, the hospital standoff, the brutal disinheritance. Lucas stared at the screen like it might explode. "Answer it," I said quietly. "You'll regret it if you don't." His father's voice was thin, weakened. "Lucas, I don't have much time. The cancer is
à hôpital américain.
terminal. Weeks, maybe days." A pause filled with 2 years of silence. "I want to meet my grandson. If you'll allow it." We went that afternoon. Found Jean-Paul Alexandre in a private room that money could rent but not save him from. He'd lost half his weight, his skin grey, his hands trembling. But his eyes, Lucas's eyes, Philippe's eyes, were clear and desperately sorry. I was a coward. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. I let Isabel control everything. Let her drive you away, let her turn our name into a prison. I told myself I was preserving legacy when I was just afraid. He looked at our son, who was examining the hospital equipment with fearless curiosity. "May I hold him?" Lucas placed Philippe in his father's arms. Watched this dying man cradle the grandson he'd never acknowledged, tears streaming down his wasted face. "He's perfect. You're perfect." Jean-Paul looked at us, really looked, maybe for the first time. "The company is worth 3 billion euros. Your mother sits on the board like a queen. And she's miserable. Absolutely miserable. While you..." He gestured at our modest clothes, our well-worn diaper bag, the happiness we couldn't hide. "You built something real." "We did." Lucas took my hand. "No regrets. That's the legacy I should have left you." His father touched Philippe's curls. "Not money or power. Just the courage to choose love over fear. You're a better man than I ever was, son." Jean-Paul Alexandre died 3 weeks later. Left us nothing in his will. Isabel made sure of that. But that afternoon in the hospital, watching him hold our son and finally understand what mattered, Lucas got something worth more than inheritance. He got peace. And the certainty that he'd chosen right. Our little family walked out into Paris sunshine, and Lucas kissed me right there on the street. "I'm the richest man alive," he whispered against my lips. And he absolutely was. If you've made it this far, you're part of this story now. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to choose between what everyone expected and what your heart demanded? Have you ever loved someone unsuitable? Hit that like button if you believe real legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you build with courage. And subscribe, because I've got more stories about people who risked everything for love and discovered that everything was never worth as much as they thought. Your support means the world. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.